Thank you very much, all. I will lead off on the supply chain, the sustainable supply chain session, but I will quickly move over to our wonderful panelists and get insights from them before I ask them some questions and then hand over the questions to you. Disregarding anybody else in the room, Jacqueline's been really kind to me because she's lined everyone up in order on the screen in the program and here as well. So it helps with my confusion. So my name is Peter Ball. I'm a professor of operations management at the University of York, and I've been given the honor of chairing this session. And I'd like to say a couple of words initially before I hand over to the panel members. They'll introduce themselves and they will give us some insight into what they're doing on sustainable supply chains. I had to smile, and I think Kevin will follow on from me on this, that from the very start of the session, including the Lord Mayor saying she doesn't know anything about the session and the subject area, and then started talking about people and businesses and transportation, and others then followed on. And so there's already a theme of supply chain that has been emerging in this session, and we want to delve more deeply into it. So I'll make give you a quick overview once again of what we're going to do. We'll get some questions at the very end, and then, like in the last session, we'll ask all the questions first, and then give the panelists time to think about them and try and put some of them together in their answers. So I want to get out of your way, everyone, and hand over to Kevin. Kevin, can you introduce yourself and say a bit more about what your understanding of supply chains is?
Thanks, and morning, everyone. So my name is Kevin McCann. I work for NextEnergy Group. We are fundamentally an investor in utility-scale power plants, specifically solar farms and grid-scale energy storage. So big batteries, basically. And we've also got a development arm and an asset management arm. So what I mean by that is we do greenfield development of new projects, and we invest in, buy, own and operate existing projects. And we also look after the day-to-day management of those power plants to making them working as efficiently as possible and generating as much clean energy as possible for the grid. As part of my day job, a large part of what I'm involved in is supporting our procurement team to ensure responsible sourcing. We are, as I say, primarily an investment management firm, and what that means is that we really sit in the middle of the people we're buying from and the areas in which we are constructing our power plants. So our impact as a business, as much as anything, is the upstream impact of our suppliers, so the companies who are manufacturing the components in which we're investing and the plant and machinery in which we're investing, and also the downstream impact of where we're building our plants, how we interact with local communities, with the local environment, and further down the line, what happens to all that plant and machinery when these assets get to the end of their operational life, and how and in what fashion they get decommissioned. So I suppose just a couple of brief things really in terms of, one is that point about really understanding where you sit in the value chain, which is the point I've already made about our impact is the impact of the people we're buying from. And so we're engaged in a lot of work at the moment around what we call traceability, so understanding the raw material inputs of the products we're buying, right back up to the very beginning of any supply chain, which fundamentally usually starts with a mining company extracting things from the ground. And that's true for every piece of equipment in this room. So we're doing a lot of work looking at that. We are also, there was a comment made by Jack, I think, from Aviva in the previous session about the importance of moving as one where possible as an industry. And I think that's a really perceptive comment because we're a big buyer by sort of renewable energy standards, but by the standards of perhaps the consumer electronics industry, we're not as big. So I think what's really important is, even though we are of course competing as individual businesses, it's to seek to collaborate where possible, because that's what drives the development of market mechanisms that can bring about change. And speaking from direct personal experience, we've really seen supply chain diversification happening over the last 2 or 3 years in the solar industry in particular, and that's it's been phenomenal to watch that happen in real time. And then finally, last thing I'd say at this stage is that perfection is not that it's unattainable, but that nothing happens overnight. Supply chains are formidably complex. They involve, of course, a huge range of legal, technical, financial, logistical impacts, which are a function of politics and social events happening all over the world. And so I think it's an iterative process. It's always about trying to improve on what you're already doing, with a clear understanding of what the risks and opportunities are in your particular sector, and as I say, trying to improve over time, and taking it one step at a time, really.
Hello, my name's Astrid. I work for a company called TechBuyer. TechBuyer sits right in the middle of a global supply chain. So we buy, we refurbish, and we sell data center equipment predominantly. That's servers, storage, and networking. And what that means is that our operations has multiple supply chains. So we've got the supply chain of new, which has its own issues in terms of questioning and how we're doing on that. We have a refurbished supply chain, which means that we have questions to ask of our secondary market suppliers, which might be slightly different. We've got how we deliver to customers downstream and the best value on that, and how to extend product life, on how to minimize materials and energy usage within that product life. And then we've got a reverse supply chain. So we buy equipment back from customers, which I guess is a third supply chain. And then the reverse supply chain of what happens at end of life and what are your risks there. So that's kind of where we sit. And alongside, or because of where we sit, we have to understand the ecosystem probably more than other companies. And the data on that particular ecosystem is lacking. So we've worked a lot with research organizations across Europe to try and establish what the materials content of servers, storage, and networking is, and therefore what the mining impact of that is, how you can design for circularity, how you can make a business case for refurbishment, and how you can improve your recycling technologies. It leads us to have partnerships with higher value recyclers, which means that there's a business trade-off. So we try and allocate a portion of our business at end of life to bioleaching, for example, which at the moment is in its nascent stages. So what are the benefits of that, and what reporting do you ask from your downstream supply chain to make sure that what you're doing is a responsible investment of your money and your business, and is it generating the returns that you want? And then also, we work a lot in trade, and when you work in trade, you're very, very conscious of the global supply chain and the restrictions in the global supply chain. So we saw that in COVID. I think we're probably going to see that again going forwards with the rise of AI, because there's not enough energy in production at the moment to sustain AI in the way that it looks like it's going, and there's going to be a materials issue as well. So there's kind of these global issues that touch upon our relatively small business.
Thank you, Astrid. Over to Katie.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Katie, and I work for Jet2.com and Jet2 Holidays. We are the UK's largest tour operator and also the UK's third largest airline. So we have an exceptionally diverse supply chain across multiple geographies. So it's a really big challenge for us. And when it comes to sustainability for my industry, the focus is very much on climate change. I know there's a lady in the audience earlier, I think Rose, you mentioned the choice between train and rail travel, air travel. It might surprise you to know that aviation accounts for 2 to 3% of emissions globally, so it is a small proportion. However, we are an incredibly challenging sector to decarbonise. So we don't have electric aircraft, we don't have hydrogen-powered aircraft currently. The technology is just not currently there at a commercial scale. The next best solution we have is looking at alternative fuels, so lower carbon, sustainable aviation fuels. However, there's not many SAF, sustainable aviation fuels, in supply currently, so it will take time for that technology to ramp up. So when it comes to supply chain, I think this is an area for the aviation and travel industry where we can make genuine impact today. So when we launched our sustainability strategy earlier this year, we, for the first time, monitored our Scope 3 emissions, so the emissions from our supply chain. And we found that a significant proportion of our emissions come from our customer hotel stays, so the hotels that we sell alongside our package holidays. We currently contract with over 6,000 hotels in 70 sun, ski and city destinations, so a huge supply chain. And a very diverse supply chain in terms of the size. We work with large hotel chains down to the very small boutique hotels. So for us, the challenge is bringing them on the journey with us and making sure that it's equitable as well, so that all of our business partners are able to decarbonise and enhance their sustainability performance. And the way we do that is through a focus on hotel sustainability certification. So late last year, we launched our Certified Sustainable Hotels collection. This is a collection of hotels that meet a standard for sustainability. So they've been certified as taking action in the areas of energy reduction, emission accounting, conservation of local heritage, social value, so providing a great place to work and supporting their colleagues. And these standards are recognised by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, the GSTC. We currently have 1,200 hotels in this collection, and we have a target to have 3,000 hotels in this collection by 2035. So certification for us is a really great way of pushing forward the sustainability agenda. But we also understand that it's expensive for some of our suppliers. So it's really important that we work with them to take them on this journey. And the way we have done that is through partnering with a well-known hotel sustainability standard called Green Key. And through our relationship with Green Key, we offer our hotels a discount so then they can work towards certification.
Hello, I'm Lloyd Atkin. I'm the MD of a company called BioD. We manufacture sustainable cleaning products. Sat here this morning, I guess, when I was originally asked to do this, I thought we're a very small business. It's very difficult for us to affect supply chains, especially upstream. But then, having sat and listened to some people around here, I think I'm in the fortunate position that we were a kind of purpose-driven business from day one. So everything we do has sustainability steeped in it, and we're not trying to change the world internally. So we focus because of, people have said earlier on, your upstream supply chains are very difficult as a small business to affect. So we affect what we can, and we do our best with our kind of downstream supply chains, which, we're cleaning products, predominantly liquid products. We do use plastics because, we've done research with the likes of the University of York. Plastic is a very durable, reusable, and safe way to transport liquids. So we actually work on closed loop in our downstream supply chain, ensuring that we're making it as easy as possible for consumers to reuse the products we put into the marketplace. So we use 100% post-consumer recycled plastics. I believe we were the first in the UK to do that. And across all of our consumer-sized products, we also have 20-litre refill drums which go into the supply chain, and now retailers can send those back to us very easily. We pay for it, we launder them. We've done the calculations again with the help of the University of York to ensure that actually it is lower carbon emissions than actually by reusing or recycling the products. So I think that's what I've taken from it. All businesses can do what they can, and we collaborate and we take those learnings, whether they be sustainable, environmental, ESG, or commercial, and then try and apply those to our upstream supply chain as well. So we try and sell those benefits to the probably much bigger suppliers we have, and exert our influence in that way.
One thing that struck me, without any disrespect to any one of you, you were all a bit repetitive in some ways, and I've been writing down some words, and I don't know whether others spotted it, but you talked about influence and collaboration a lot. It's a challenge and an opportunity for all of you. You talked about the complexity, and it's really easy to think about supply chains as really simple. It's just one flow of transactions or goods, and you gave a really rich picture of what you were all engaged in. There's lots of questions I want to ask, and I will ask some of them, but then I'll hand over to the audience in a bit. One of the things that struck me, and if we start with you, Lloyd, and then we'll work backwards if you've got a comment on this, was the depth of what you were talking about. You really understand not only your own businesses, but either your downstream, your customer side, or upstream. And some of you were talking way, way, way upstream. This level of scrutiny that you're giving your supply chains, has it led to anything that is surprising or valuable?
Well, from our point of view, looking both up and down supply chains, there are a couple of examples, and I'd say we're small, so we can be agile, but a number of circular economy projects by the bigger supermarkets, etc., have been quite kind of publicly cancelled in recent weeks and months. And because it's something we're passionate about and it's embedded in our business, we've persisted, and we've found a way that makes it work environmentally, commercially, and sustainably. And it's our commitment to that that's allowed it to happen. And then because we do it for genuinely sustainable reasons, we're prepared to share those learnings with other businesses locally, people further down our supply chain, or whatever it may be to achieve that. So that's what we've learned kind of downstream, that it is possible and it is commercially viable to do that. Upstream, I mean, an example from a few years ago, palm oil, has always been a hot topic sustainably. And as a company that can't exert a lot of influence over our supply chain in a kind of demanding way, we have to do it in a very gentle way. And, for instance, palm oil, it's very difficult to get segregated palm oil, There's a thing called mass balance, which means as long as they only sell as much ethical palm oil as they buy, it's very challenging. But one of the things we learned from palm was there was a big movement, especially with consumers, and it's an education piece, that palm was evil and the devil and responsible for deforestation, etc., which to some degree is true, but actually, now we sit on the round table of sustainable palm oil, actually palm yields way more than many other vegetable oils per hectare, and the demand for fatty oils are so high that actually if palm's responsibly sourced, it's a better option than oilseed rape or coconut, or because yields are much lower per hectare. So it's about that kind of that really surprised us doing that research. That actually, the perception of something that is bad, whether it be air travel or palm oil or whatever it may be, can find its kind of place in the world and the supply chain. So up to an example of each way there.
Thank you, Lloyd. Over to Katie.
Thank you. Look, that was a really good point there around how for sustainable practices that might seem unsustainable, if you work with them to make them responsible, then that can generate great social and economic benefits. When it comes to travel and tourism, it provides tremendous social and economic value in the UK through jobs, skills, but also in the destination economies as well, providing income to regions that are less connected to mainland, such as the Balearics and the Canaries, for example. So we find that working with our hotels and our supply chain and our destination partners really helps propagate that. So for the launch of our Certified Sustainable Hotels programme, we found a link between hotel sustainability certifications, so hotels that have a certification to better care for the destination itself, such as the beaches that they're located on. So there's a requirement in the certification to ensure that the biodiversity is protected, the beaches are kept clean and things like that. There's also a link between certification and quality, so making sure that our customers get a high quality stay. so responding to customer demands as well. So that has really helped us with our relationships with the destinations that we fly to, and the tourism boards that we speak to are really passionate about this as well. So we're helping support their own objectives by enhancing the sustainability of our business partners. On another side of that, I think looking at supply chain has opened up our eyes just to the scale of the impacts across different industries. So one example is recently we've had an audit done on our website to understand the carbon intensity of the actual presentation of our sales website. So the delivery of traffic that comes through our website, how it's actually presented. So where you put pictures and the content that's on the website can affect its carbon footprint. So it's opened our eyes to that, and that's helped us understand where we can go next in terms of reducing our Scope 3 impact. So that's a really exciting project that we're looking forward to.
There are lots of things that we've learned from our supply chain. On the technology side, we've been forced to go right back to material level. Originally, so we could understand the benefit of extending product life was the first reason that we did that. But when you go back through the supply chain, you have to understand what's happening with technology and its rate of change, which means that you then have to understand energy efficiency, which means that you then have to look at ways you can best deliver the product to the customer in its most sustainable form. So with as few materials as possible and as energy efficient as possible. And that changes all the time. So chips change. What we're doing on chips change. Software changes. So incorporating all of that has enabled us to be better at being sustainable across the board, because you will always get customers coming to you asking for new products. If you understand the materials that's in them and you pair that with understanding about how you build your systems, you can be really confident that what you're delivering as a new piece of equipment is as sustainable as it can be. So it's kind of one big learning through having to go out into the supply chain and understand the landscape. And another side of that has been with our packaging. So we sell a sustainable business product. If you're going to do that, you have to walk the talk, as people say already. So it's like, what are we doing internally with our packaging, and what solutions are out there and what solutions aren't there? So what can we deliver right now that's as good as it can possibly be with the constraint of not getting any returns on electronics? And that meant a lot of working with the supply chain and developing products with the suppliers, which is a nice, exciting place to be. So it was a worthwhile project for us internally, and it enables us to be really confident that we've delivered the best we can.
I feel like you and I are involved in quite a lot of similar things probably in our day job in terms of trying to establish material origins and so on. I think, so the direction of travel from our perspective, from a regulatory and disclosures perspective, is very simple. We are going to need to provide more information on more topics further upstream. What flows from that is it's sometimes very, very difficult even to know where to start. So this might sound like a really obvious point, but the way we think about it is, as the renewables industry, as the solar industry in particular, what are we buying where the supply chain we're buying from is specific to solar? And therefore, where can we as an individual buyer and as an industry have the most direct control or influence on that particular component, topic, material, whatever it may be, in terms of both the risks and opportunities that we're trying to manage? And I think, I've already mentioned this concept of traceability, which goes back to what we've been talking about, fundamentally knowing where your stuff comes from. If there are good or bad impacts, you have to begin by knowing where those impacts are occurring in order to be able to begin to address them. And 2-3 years ago, the concept of going up to your tier 4, 5, 6 suppliers, right the way back up to the mines and so on, again, very difficult to even know where to start. But fast forward, and we now talk to the manufacturers, our supply chain partners, fundamentally about, okay, so we know where this comes from for this reason. Now we want to know where this comes from for this reason. And it's about very, very early engagement. So explaining to them, this is a concept of what we're trying to do, and crucially, this is why we're trying to do it. To give them as much foresight as possible of the thing we're trying to achieve, because at the end of the day, all businesses are nothing if not practical. You know, if you're a client and you've got a request, people will seek to respond to that, as long as it's clear about what you're trying to do and when you want to have it by, and again, recognizing that nothing happens overnight.
I'm going to move on to another question that I've got, and one more after that, and then I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. But I was intrigued by what you were all saying just then about some of these complex decisions about you want to do one thing because that's popular opinion, or you feel you must do something else because that's in your heart, or the data says that's the right thing to do, but you're sharing so much data, and people have so much data. So I wanted to explore around how much you want your customers, your consumers, to know about the decisions they're making, or to just say, look, I trust you. So I'm going to get you to think about that. It's a really difficult question, but you've all given examples where you're putting out so much information, and there's so many different people in your supply chains, from consumers to stakeholders, wider stakeholders, right, or customers. I just wondered whether you feel at times you don't want to share information because you know it's the right thing to do, you just want somebody to understand something simply, or you feel there's an element of engagement of your different suppliers, customers.
Some of our conversations, they absolutely don't want to know. They just want to know how much it costs and when they can get it.
Okay.
And they would trust our sales teams to suggest something that's right for them, and know their stuff. Those are transactional conversations that happen in the company. But then there's all the rest of it and the research side of it, where absolutely you do want to steal from your friends, like the open community says, because it means that you don't have to do the same work over and over again. And it also means that you're coming to a consensus that everybody agrees on. Now, if you look at data for long enough, you realize that all of it's wrong. It'll get you about 80% of the way there, because there's just not enough time to collect every single data point and come up with an absolutely certain answer. So what you need in that case is consensus of, we think we're about 80% now, we think that's about right. Now, can we just crack on and reduce that now, please? So that collaboration, understanding, stealing ideas is really useful. And also there's an element of celebration in that as well. So I am a big advocate of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are not the nitty-gritty end of supply chain verification and measurement and all of that sort of business. But what they do is they allow people to say, what am I doing well? Who else is doing the same things? How can I get a flag out and dress up in these beautiful colours and celebrate for once, because it can get quite depressing. And so that's another element of what we try and do with our stakeholders and supply chain, is to teach them how to celebrate. And then hopefully join in the celebrations, because then it's fun and engaging and you want to do more of it, which is kind of where we want to get to.
I think credible communication to customers is one of the biggest challenges for a sustainability professional, because sustainability is an incredibly complex topic, and it's important that customers are informed, but it is in a way that's understandable to them, which is one of the reasons why we use GSTC at the moment for that assurance of the GSTC recognition for our certified sustainable hotels. It's an emerging, evolving field at the minute, and it's making it quite challenging to I guess, be trustworthy of certification schemes, because they can be quite broad. So particularly in our industry with hotel sustainability certifications, it's a very diverse market. Some standards don't require audits, so in-person audits of the hotel. Some of them are just online questionnaires. So we need to make sure that we're working with credible standards. There's also something called the EU Green Claims Directive That's a new law that's been proposed in Europe, and this will require certifications to become accredited, so they're also being audited. And the criteria that they set for their standards, so what makes a sustainable hotel, has technical experts advising them to ensure that it does cover the breadth of the topic. So I think regulation has a key part to play, so ensuring that keeps focused on the credibility of sustainability performance, as well as reporting data as well. So I think a next step for us is to encourage our supply chain to share their emissions data so we get a better understanding of how well they're performing, so we can make an informed judgment about how we support them with their own sustainability goals. And that's driven by regulation at the moment. So there's a number of sustainability reporting regulations out there. So yeah, I think regulation at the moment is a really big part of that. And when you're communicating to your customers, making it very clear what you mean by sustainability, so they fully understand what kind of products that you're putting out to the world.
Well, I think one of the reasons we're here is we produce, and we have done for 5 years, a kind of pretty detailed sustainability report, which takes a lot of resources internally to actually gather that data and put it into something meaningful. But we also format it in a way that makes it hopefully engaging and interesting and easy to digest for our peer stakeholders of any kind, and encourages them to act in a similar kind of way. And we've brought lots more things other than sustainability with ESG into it too. And we're happy kind of for people to steal from that and share it and, take those ideas. So, go and have a look. And if it helps you shape something for yours and start measuring how you perform sustainably or ethically or any of the issues we're talking about, please feel free to steal it. And it's that kind of collaborative sharing, which I think has been a theme throughout today, that really helps push this along. I think, again, the other thing is accreditations. I mean, we have lots of accreditations, which, again, take a lot of time and money to maintain. But in our industry particularly, I think greenwashing is a huge thing, and consumers are very kind of resilient to that now. And I think having every accreditation we have is third-party accredited, in-person audited, which ensures or hopefully gives our consumers confidence that we're behaving in the ways we say we are. And it's embedded in absolutely everything we do. There are some accreditations out there, the Good Business Charter, I'm sure, is one, and there is B Corp, and there are things that now consumers are taking, indicators, EcoCert, and most of them aren't perfect, but they're generally, if they're audited, they show a business has a genuine commitment and is on the right track. So I think there are indicators for consumers, and it's something that's necessary in a demand of those consumers, that there is this greenwashing or this complexity, and I'd like to know if company A performs better than company B in that way. So I think there's progress in it, and collaboration and sharing of knowledge and experience will only encourage that.
I work for an investment fund, and one thing that a lot of people don't realise is that we're not actually investing, it's not our cash. It's our investors and us, who are typically institutional funds, so people like pensions, for example. And they take, of course, a very long-term view on returns. And so a really important part of my job is communicating with our investors that part of the reason we are so focused on sustainability is it's about building resilience into our business, to market risk, to reputational risk, to future regulatory requirements, and a whole bunch of other things. Because at the end of the day, they want to know that we are managing their cash as effectively as possible. Now, specifically in the renewables industry, a lot of our supply chains are based on the other side of the world. And so we get inbound queries from our investors who, they've read a headline and they're concerned about something, and they want to know that we are taking a very, very detailed look at the raw material origins and other origins of our supply chains, again, to know that we are managing their money in an appropriate manner. So I think that's a really important additional motivation for why we, for example, as a business, carry out such detailed due diligence on the manufacturers from whom we buy, because it's about demonstrating, as we've been hearing about a lot this morning, about how sustainable business is also a resilient business. And, we've seen all the disruptions with COVID and other things that have happened over the last few years. And that's a really important part of why we integrate our supply chain and procurement, our sustainable commitments into our supply chain and procurement decisions. They are one and the same, effectively.
This is not looking for arrogance necessarily, but if you've got something to boast about, then absolutely brilliant. We want to listen. But is there something you're doing now in your businesses that you think everyone will be doing in the future, regardless? That it will be the new norm, or is there anything that you and other businesses are doing now, but it's not mainstream, but you think in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, well, that's just going to be the norm. We're not even going to discuss this issue that you're about to mention now because it will be taken care of and it will be a norm. So if there's anything you can see that's happening.
Lots of people are talking about it. It seems very new now, but so we've been plugging away at it for 4 or 5 years now. And I think closed loop, I think consumers in the future will just expect that's taken care of in lots of supply chains, and that will become the norm. I mean, really, it's been happening for decades when you think about your local milkman. That just happened. And people didn't think about it, that supply chain. It just operated well ahead of its time. So I think those things, they will be more and more embedded in business and how businesses make the decisions. And hopefully, like that will just become the accepted norm, that's what happens. And many supply chains are more complex than that. That's, obviously lent itself very well to that circular economy and having a full closed loop. But I think, we've proved it's possible, though many people are saying it isn't at the moment with our types of products. So I think that's the one thing I think it's already happening and will just become the accepted norm going forward.
One thing that we're starting to do that will become the norm in future is having sustainability considerations into commercial contractual agreements. So making it clear to our business partners that we care about this and we want them to care about it too. So starting to have the conversations with them around how well they're doing in terms of sustainability. When we vet new suppliers, we now ask them questions about their sustainability performance. We ask for evidence as well, such as certifications. I feel like I'm discussing certifications to death today. I think having clear expectations that if you want to work with us, that sustainability is vital, that you also partner with us on that as well. So that's on the supply chain side. One thing that we say at Jet2 is that every role at Jet2 is a sustainability role. And one thing that we'd like to do is try and get sustainability embedded in all of our colleagues' roles, be they work in cabin crew, engineering, in resort, because every role is a sustainability role. Even if you work from home, there are ways in which you can be more sustainable, such as how you use your IT equipment, advocating for sustainability, discussing it with customers. So I think just getting that embedded all across the business is something that will be the norm, hopefully, in the next few years.
You willing to predict?
I agree with both of those predictions. Circularity and making it part of everybody's job role. We've got an accredited training company for IEMA in the company. We put everybody through sustainability training for that reason. My boss is here today talking about 1% improvements in the business. That's because it's efficiency. I think that what we can see in the market is looming scarcity of resources and energy. And you look at the growth curve of energy usage as we migrate onto digital systems and onto the electric grid away from fossil fuel transport and gas boilers and things like that. You've got this pinch point. So businesses are going to have to be increasingly aware of the resources that they use and the energy that they use, and they're going to have to implement what's now seen as sustainability, but it's actually just resilience.
Finally, and then we'll open for questions.
Thanks. I've mentioned it a couple of times already this morning, but I think that the ability to track and trace where all your products are coming from, including the raw materials, right back up the supply chain, I would hope / think, is definitely going to become more business as usual. And I think the reason for that is all or many of the other impacts, carbon emissions, impacts on nature, water, abstraction, usage, discharges, all the rest of it fundamentally starts from a location-based assessment of where your supply chains originate. And in order to have that, you have to know where you're buying stuff from. And that's very, very complicated as you go back up through tier 1, 2, 3, 4 suppliers. But at least in my industry in renewables, that's definitely the direction of travel. And I would hope that that will become more business as usual.
Thank you very much. Time for questions from everyone else.
Hi, Hinkin Lee, NextEnergy Capital. I've got a question about supply chain traceability and whether, on the whole, we are being reactive, i.e. are the known impacts driving traceability? And, I guess pointing this at perhaps Lloyd mentioning the palm oil aspects, that's been well known. Or are we being proactive, where traceability is actually starting to identify impacts that we didn't know about?
My question to the panel is, what are your views on the disproportionate pressure that supply chain demands for sustainability put on smaller suppliers versus larger ones?
Hey, Chris from Droppoint. A few people mentioned circular economy. What interesting examples do you have of like waste products or materials coming out of your product or service that you're looking to close the loop on, whether within your own business or partnering with other businesses that can make use of your waste?
We're a big buyer in the solar industry. We do the same as what Katie was saying. We have contractual safeguards. We enforce those. We run third-party audits to verify our raw materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The solar industry is kind of three industries in one. So you've got the residential rooftop industry, which is domestic installations on houses, commercial and industrial, so big sheds, warehouses, schools, universities, and so on. And then what we do, which is grid-scale power plants. We are acutely aware of the fact that smaller installers, tradespeople, do not necessarily have the same ability to develop lengthy contracts, enforce them, run all the traceability and all the rest of it that we do. And that's why, so I actually chair so Solar Energy UK is a trade association for UK Solar. I actually chair the responsible sourcing steering group for that. And we discuss this issue all the time. And one of the things that the UK industry is involved in, for example, is something called the Solar Stewardship Initiative, which is the solar-specific ESG and sustainability standard that has been developed from scratch over the last 3 years. One of the specific rationales for doing that is to enable smaller organizations to benefit from a standard, a certification, as we've been hearing about, that means they can buy product that they know has been certified to a given standard to give them comfort over what they're buying. Now, of course, that doesn't reduce the obligation upon any company to perform due diligence and make sure they're asking questions appropriate to their size and the level of risk that they're just fundamentally able to manage. But we and as NextEnergy Group, we are directly involved in so many different initiatives at an industry-wide level. And there is a self-interest to that, right? Because, like I say, many people don't realize that the solar industry, for example, is three industries in one. And so, to a degree, our reputation as a business is only as good as the reputation of the industry as a whole. So if smaller organizations, smaller buyers aren't able to have the same level of comfort when it comes to who they're sourcing from, that affects us as a business. So we're happy to bear, I don't want to say the free rider cost, but we view it as part of, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and also it's in our interest as an individual organization to ensure that the industry as a whole can access the benefits of meaningful sustainability initiatives. So I think that's kind of what I wanted to say.
We're very proactive about lots of things, and traceability and sustainability, particularly to us, is important. So I'm kind of excusing others if they're not as proactive as we are. But I think the honest truth is we're both proactive and reactive, because we can't know. I mean, say palms are a kind of well-established issue, or has been historically. But then things like COVID come along, and there are all sorts of challenges you have. So I think honestly we're reactive. we engage with our customers and consumers because they're often different people. We sell through wholesalers, et cetera, to end users. So we try and engage with those individual stakeholders as much as possible to find out what is important to them and what they want and what direction of travel they expect us to be having. So I think we're proactive in that way, but then we do have to be reactive in other ways. So I think we try. And the other point I'll just really quickly pick on is the kind of end of life waste we produce. We try and produce as little waste as possible commercially and environmentally, and it's quite easy with our products. They're cleaning and personal care products, so we will, any end of run part boxes, things like that, we can donate to local organisations. But then we do lots of creative things with other, if we have any plastic bottle waste, we work with an organisation called Scrap Store, and they have arts projects with young people, and I think it's about getting creative where we can't encourage our suppliers to have a circular economy on the containers they supply to us. We have a local company that makes furniture out of them for garden spaces, and so I think if you think creatively, there are lots of things you can do with waste, and often it's people that come to us, to be honest, because they know we're a sustainable business, and say, I've got an idea for this. Can you give me your waste for free? And the answer's obviously going to be yes, because it's a great thing for both organisations.
We love the scrap stores. Yeah, it's one of our favourite things, and we partner with a charity around the corner that takes our bubble wrap and gives it to charities so they can sell online. So it's about community and networking. I'm just going to give a quick plug to Green Gain in Leeds, who are having an event talking about how they can kind of set up a swap store for businesses to look at what their waste is and what other people might need. We were invited down. We couldn't go. We couldn't go. But if anybody wants details on that, I can pass them along. You just put a list of what you need and what you've got, and they try and see what they can do about that. Also, on our own waste, what we try and do is, I mentioned before, develop better partnerships with recyclers. And then in return for giving them business, we also ask for reporting every year. How are you getting better? How are you reducing the pollution associated with the recycling? And how many more materials are you on the way to recovering now than you were a year ago? And if we get good answers on that, then our e-waste team will probably give them more business. So that's kind of a way that we're trying to promote good behaviour with our reversed supply chain. Traceability in the tech sector, there's an interesting crossover between traceability and increased efficiency. So if you can find out where a hard drive, for example, is from, and then you can test its health, you can also say how long it's useful for. So you get this really nice dual benefit there from having traceability. And they've been talking about using traceability in the secondary market for years and years and years. They just haven't got around to it yet. And then there's a whole load of, the serial numbers that you would need for that level of traceability has its own tech cost. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff happening there. And then different approaches. The way that we deal with that, I guess, depends on the size of company. Sorry, that was a question on disproportionate pressure on smaller suppliers. We tend to be more aggressive with the larger ones, is how we tend to handle it. So we do get involved in a little bit of advocacy. We've advocated for having a right to repair. We've done some quite high-profile things with the Environmental Audit Committee on promoting circularity, which isn't taking on people head-on, because we can't, but it's kind of trying to ease that conversation forward. Really small suppliers that aren't in a position to answer all of the over 1,000 data points of the CSRD, we would probably hold webinars. We invite them in for training, and we did a webinar on global goals, your students actually, to try and promote what the benefit of being a sustainable provider is. So we'd have a different approach there. And then across the board, we have a kind of standard code of conduct, which is a work in progress as you try and tighten it up alongside all the other things that you have to do as a medium business, or small to medium business. So that's kind of a work in progress there. And we based our code of conduct on the UNGC 10 principles and try and build that in as much as possible. And then alongside that, make sure we're walking the talk.
So as I mentioned earlier, we work with really large hotel chains who have a lot of money to decarbonise and implement sustainability initiatives, down to the really small boutique hotels in developing economies as well. So it was really important when we were making decisions around the launch of our Certified Sustainable Hotels collection that it was carrot, not stick. So bringing them on the journey with us, not making it an additional expense that they'll have to fork out for. And the way we did that is framing it as a business opportunity, because it is a business opportunity for every hotel. So we have looked at market research, and there is a market trend towards sustainable travel choices and hotels with sustainability certifications. We did some internal research as well, and we know that over half of Jet2 customers would feel better staying at a certified sustainable hotel. We've also, looking at our website traffic, found that of the customers that search for our Certified Sustainable Hotels collection, the conversion rate is higher. So customers that are looking for a more sustainable way to stay tend to book there and then on the day. So it's actually supporting our sales as well. In terms of how it can help their organisations, sustainability is a cost-saving opportunity as well. Being more energy efficient reduces your energy bills. It attracts more customers, as I've mentioned. So there's lots of ways in which it is a business opportunity. Having said that, we know that sustainability certification does cost because it requires audit and verification. So we partnered with an organisation, a charity called Green Key, who are one of the many hotel sustainability certification schemes out there. And they, through our partnership with them, we are providing our hotels a discount on the Green Key levy, so it makes it cheaper for them and a more attractive opportunity for them as well. On the circular economy side of things, I think for us and I suppose the wider industry, it's something that we're probably at the start of our journey on. Aviation has been very much focused around climate change, and rightfully so. And we're also restricted by waste management options that we have. So, for example, it might surprise you to hear that waste that arises from international air transport, which is a headache from Brexit, so thanks Brexit, means that anything that has come into contact with food on your flight legally has to be incinerated or deep landfilled. So the vast majority of the waste that's generated on our flight isn't recycled, which is quite heartbreaking, really. So I've been working on a project with government to try and change that. So I've been working on a working group with DEFRA and the Animal and Plant Health Agency, which is the regulator for international catering waste, to try and change that and come up with a solution for how we can segregate what is considered by law hazardous waste, so that's the foodborne waste, from the clean recyclables, such as, you know, your plastic tumblers that you use on flight for your in-flight drinks, and food packaging and things like that. So we're coming to the end of that project now, and fingers crossed we will have that guidance published by the regulator, and then we can start working to enhance our onboard recycling.
It's been fascinating listening to you all, and it's been really insightful what you've talked about in your businesses and from a wider perspective on supply chain. So thank you very much.